was born in a Jewish family, and we didn't go to temple every week, but went on the major holidays. Kind of a liberal Jewish family, I guess you could say. Well, that, even the way you're asking that, there's Jewish culture and there's Jewish religion. A lot of times people think they're the same thing, so there's definitely certain Jewish cultural things that are just part of who I am. The religious part, I went to Hebrew school, I was bar mitzvahed. I didn't believe in it that much, but even during that time, some of the cool, what I call the magical things that are in the Bible, those are things that really rang true for me. And my parents were very liberal. I grew up in an area, there were a lot of Jewish people, so I didn't even realize that most of the world was not Jewish till I got a little older and ventured out into the world, I don't remember the details of it, but this person was hiding from being persecuted, and he had to go into a temple, and the only light he would have had, there was a lamp there that had enough oil to last for one day, and he lit the lamp and it lasted for 8 days. That magical thing that happened, that gave me the chills. And so those mystical things that are in the Bible are the things I could relate to. Not the part of be guilty, God will not love you if you don't, behave, basically. That part I don't. The story of Hanukkah and the lights, and we light I don't really light the candles anymore, but yes, I did that growing up, yes. I had been living in Colorado, this in the United States for people who are not here, and I grew up in Rye Brook, New York, a little bit north of New York City. So I was living in Colorado. I'd come back with my roommate, who was also who was a childhood friend of mine, and we drove all the way back from Colorado to Westchester, New York. That day we heard a high school friend of ours was having a party, so we went to it. When we came back from Colorado, we drove in his car, so I borrowed my mom's car to go to the party. And we were drinking and doing some, smoking some pot and stuff. And I kind of thought the girl who had the party was kind of cute, and I wanted to go back. I wanted to talk to her, but she was very busy being the host, and I didn't get to. So I came up with a plan. If I pretended I was a little higher than I thought I was, which ended up being not accurate in that, but so I had my friend drive me home, telling her I left my car there because I shouldn't drive, and I'd go back the next day and be able to talk to her. Almost all the way home, I realized my sister needed my mom's car the next morning for work. I told my friend, why I had him drive me, and he drove me back to the party. I still remember, I went back in to say something to someone, and then I remember walking toward the door of leaving the party the second time, and I was, going to take my car, and even when I have an image in my mind, and I realized I should have known I shouldn't have driven then, because the image of seeing the people, it was like, when you drink sometimes the colors are a little too bright and it looks kind of hazy. But I don't remember this part, but I drove, and about 3/4 of the way back to my parents' house, I hit a tree. And that part I don't remember either, but I remember being out of my body, looking down, seeing the car really smashed, and my body like leaning against a tree, like sitting on the ground leaning against a tree. I could see my head was smashed open, and it looked like I wasn't alive. And there was a police officer crouching over me. What I was looking at was it was nighttime and dark, but around me it was all white. Then behind me, even though I was looking this way, there was like a circle of white light, and within that was a being, like an outline of a being, but just a light being with other, a bunch of different shades of white light radiating off of that person. What seemed like not too long later, the being behind me said, "You have to go back, your father wants you to stay." I knew at that time the father they were talking about was not my physical father, but the spiritual father. I'm a very kinesthetic person, so physically feeling and emotional feeling is a lot how I relate to things, but it was a feeling of loving and knowing and warmth and just this, like everything is okay. And I even, I looked down at my body, seeing I was in really bad shape. It seemed fine, because it's like I kind of knew the whole, everything was fine on the earth and everything was fine in spirit. So I went back, after the voice said that, I went back into my body and came to 3 days later in the hospital. That is a good question. No one ever asked me that. It was many years ago, and I try to get very specific in how I explain it. As I would say, it was audible that I heard a voice from outside. It wasn't just inside my head. Yes. That was something I just knew. Like even as soon as I just knew that part, I never even really thought about that for years, but then I was like, oh, my father, like, why wouldn't I think it's my physical father? It just, when I heard that, I knew that that's what it was. Not at all. And it's, when I think about it, it's almost kind of funny, but no, it just seemed like everything was perfect. Just everything in my life, I was in my early 20s, just everything in the world, everything, just like I just knew it was right and proper. It really felt like I knew everything and just everything made sense. Sometimes I describe it as the perfect math equation, so I was part of it, but not also separate from it, like a part of it, let's say, would be more than saying a part of it. So, yes, that's a little big way to say it, but yes, humbly, yes, I would say that, because it was almost like it was humbling. There's something in my heart that just wow, this is awesome. I can't even explain. I keep trying to find the right word for how amazing it was, and there are no words for that. I didn't right away. Definitely not. Some things happened to me where I was introduced to people that were kind of open to this kind of thing. So in one way, the biggest thing that happened to me was I started to meet a lot of people that had near-death experiences and spiritual teachers that were talking about that kind of thing. One of the really cool stories, and I knew this happened all these years, but I never realized how cool it really was, because after my near-death experience, my mom convinced me, actually she bribed me, she bought me a new car to move back to Westchester, and I'm sitting in my apartment, all of a sudden someone knocks on the door, and I think back then, like, it was before cell phones, so I didn't think now if someone knocks on my door and I don't know who it is, it's like, what's going on? But so I opened the door, and there was this beautiful woman there, and she told me she was the sister of a good friend of mine, and her sister said some things about me, and she wanted to get to know me, and she introduced me to a spiritual teacher, a Sufi sheikh, and it was just like it showed right up at my door. And once I started talking to her, she learned from this guy about death and about things like that, so I started to talk to her about it, and then to the teacher, and so there were groups of people that I could talk to about it. I eventually did tell people in my life. Some of it did not have such a good result in doing that. One of my best friends from the time I was very young till then couldn't handle it, and not too long after that decided to not be friends with me. I eventually told my dad, and it's kind of cool. My dad's 90, and he used to be a very tough guy, and about 6 years ago he met this woman and fell in love with her, and he's very smart and very sharp. It's not like just because he's 90 he's a little out of it, not at all. But he said this kind of nice thing, because his love for me since then he really started to express it. And he said something like that he had a near-death experience one time, but he was just driving in a car and he fell asleep, and the gravel hit the bottom of the car and it woke him up. So, but his love for me of wanting to connect and not thinking how weird it is that I had a near-death experience it's a way for him to bond. It's really cool. Yes, so he talked to me about certain things, and I say it's kind of funny, but I think it's really wonderful that people from different faiths can connect. So Sufism is part of the Islamic religion, and I was brought up in a Jewish family, and at the time I considered myself Jewish, but he started to talk to me about Jesus and Mary, and he talked to me about Mary's love for God and how that enabled her to open up to take in the Christ energy, and that love and the Christ energy, it just like when he said that, I go, oh, that was the white light around me. Then when he started to talk about Jesus, I knew that being behind me was Jesus. And still today, I say that, I still get kind of tingly and stuff, and it's, part of me even wants to almost cry right now. It's just like I start to feel something in my heart. It's really cool. Yes, definitely on a feeling level. Even my wanting to connect with him, it was, I just had, something in me was drawing me toward that. And so it kind of, went past religious differences, and it was a great experience. And I think it's important to look, don't let any kind of prejudice, whatever it is, religious, to block you from connecting to God and loving and, connect with people. I think it's important. God's love is present in all of us. When you look at most, people in the world, you can see their love for their children, and that's universal. The things people love to do, whether, I was a total jock growing up, it's something I love to do. People who paint or cook or, whatever it is you do, people have that love for things, and that transcends all of that. Yes, and well, some of it was during a time where this was not something people talked about at all. Like nowadays, if something happens, a lot of it is because of what's in fictional TV. There's so many things about supernatural powers and all that stuff. People are thinking about it. So, like I said, probably the biggest thing that really changed well, I don't want to say that, but part of it is I just started meeting people that had near-death experiences, people that were interested in spiritual things that was not happening before. One thing, I definitely noticed my intuition increased. I felt a connection to this thing, however we describe it, to me it's God's love. And but I did notice my hands became warm when I would touch people anytime, anywhere, and that was something that was very concrete. The part of feeling connected and even being more intuitive, it's kind of a little esoteric, where it's not as concrete as my hands becoming warm. So I became interested in it, but like I said, it was a time where you wouldn't go, oh yeah, I know what's happening. It was exploring these things, and so I started meeting people and learning and developing my skills more and more. I was kind of a wild kid. I was in my early 20s, so I wouldn't even, I like to do mountain biking and do kind of wild things. So I wasn't afraid before. Even now, I'm getting older. I'm not afraid of being dead. I definitely don't want to suffer in any way in the process of dying. My doctorate is in something called spiritual science, and it's called that because we use the scientific method to basically study ourselves and our spiritual experiences, and come up with a theory and write a paper on it. So, but we wanted to try we didn't just try. So we would keep track of pretty much everything we did, do a lot of research, but you wake up, you write down what time you wake up. We actually had to go take the pH of our urine first thing in the morning, write how much you slept, evaluate your sleeping, how much maybe you exercised, meditated, what you ate, everything, and try to come up with a theory like, well, if you do this, then this. And that included keeping track of spiritual experiences, any inner visions, we also at times would focus on what we're seeing spiritually, what we're hearing spiritually or knowing spiritually, and keep track of that too. So try to make it a scientific approach to prove these things that there's not really the concrete information about that we normally think of as scientific. I could see the events that happened that were definitely connected. As I said, I started meeting people and how it kind of led me to doing healing work. But again, right after it was over, it was still, I wasn't talking about it that much. I was still questioning it myself. And I could see before that how I had an inclination towards doing that, but there's not really a direct answer to what you're asking me. It's not like I came out of that and I knew I had to do this, because part of me was not really fully understanding what happened to me. I was always, after that, looking for that spiritual aspect. So I was in a family electrical contracting business, and some of the jobs, there are good people everywhere, whether they're aware of it or not. People are spiritual, and some people are more connected to the goodness in them. So in the jobs where there were good people and it really clicked, those, even being an electrical contractor can be a spiritual thing. But there was enough jobs in that, construction jobs that were not like that. So I started, in the meantime, I started getting interested in healing sort of as a hobby. And one day I just realized I need to shift. I need to change from electrical contracting to doing this healing work. And luckily I shifted very easily and started making enough money pretty quickly. It's a good thing. There's certain things in that religion that I don't agree with. Like I said, culturally, some people would label me as Jewish, but my family's from Eastern Europe, so to me that's more my heritage. So an Eastern European Jew, I guess you'd say, is my heritage. I would say spiritual, but definitely more Christian. I definitely believe in Jesus, and I can connect into the spirit, and Jesus is there. So is Muhammad. I was going to say Muhammad, but so is Moses and Abraham. So they're all. But as far as what I see, Jesus is like, the head of the totem pole, or the top of the heap, or whatever you'd say. And like you said, believing in Jesus basically means you're not Jewish. Yeah. I guess you're right. That was kind of black or white and prejudice in my own, it just, yes, it's trying to stay in my loving. And so sometimes I go from saying I'm no religion, sometimes I say I'm a part of all religions. It's not, I don't fit into a box, let's say. Oh yeah, no, that was definitely a big shift. And like I said, when I did risk to tell people, especially my Jewish friends, they did not like that at all. That was, and something in me just thought it was such a part of that love, and just, I don't know, it's still, I know that's the way it is, but something in my mind gets confused about it when people are not open to that. In my work, I also see images of things that I know are past lives. There's no way to prove that, but that is what I know in my heart. There's no need to be afraid. I do encourage people to meditate, and God's love is everywhere, all around, but it takes practice, because part of us is designed to focus on the physical level. Like when I work with people, they say during the session they just feel so good because I'm able to really guide them and assist them to connect into this God's love. And during the sessions I try to keep it not about any specific religion, or stay away from anything that people might associate with a specific religion. So it is open to anyone of any religion. There's no, in spirit, there's no Islam, there's no Judaism, there's no Christianity, or whatever it is. It's like everything's all one, and it is really wonderful and beautiful. It is like people think of heaven and angels and all this beautiful stuff that's so nice. I definitely believe in that, and there are times for myself and for my clients, I see things, and people just get a feeling when I tell about it, and they go, whoa. There was one, I was talking to a client, and I was seeing something, and usually it has to do with what they're talking about. In this case, it didn't. So there was something, this woman had been in part of the Catholic Church, and she was in that lifetime very attractive and accused of being too sexual, basically, in a time when women, could not express any sexuality. And part of her punishment was to be outside in the rain naked. And it just seemed, how harsh is that? But it was in a time where, women were supposed to basically close down in public. And then this woman said, whoa, something happened when she was, a teenager, that some guy was trying to make it with her. It was out in the rain, and it was just like the connection, and she just felt like it was a punishment during that time. So it was very connected. Again, there's no way to prove it like you can prove something solid, in the physical world, but enough people have the experience when they hear about it, how relevant it is to their life. And, sometimes people try to challenge and stump me, and they'll ask me about things, and then I'll tell them about a past life, and someone else told them the exact same thing. So it's that, to me, is some, when there's enough of that, it is proof that that exists. People to this day use religion for all sorts of things that I would not think is right. It is kind of getting into a meditative state, and sometimes I need to take a little time to meditate before, but I've been doing it a long time, so normally it just kind of clicks on and I start to see things. So it's not them necessarily seeing it, it's me seeing it. So it's not trying to guide them to see like a past life regression. Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great. I love to talk about it. There's something very uplifting. I know it's inspiring for me, and a lot of times people tell me hearing these interviews, it's inspiring for them also. Thanks for asking. Yeah, I get caught up in the good part. Forget about that. So my website is lawrencebrock.com. My YouTube is Dr. Lawrence Brock, and actually a couple of months ago I started a TikTok, which is Doc Brock, DOCBROCK. Yes, exactly. Doc Brock at TikTok.